Welcome, everybody. We are waiting for more folks to come in. Hey, good evening, everyone. I know we have folks that are continuing to log on, but welcome to the October program of the Wyncote Audubon Society. We have a great program for you this evening. This is our second attempt of doing our monthly programs virtually. We had great success with our September program, and we're looking forward to repeating that success this evening. Just a couple of notes. We do have another special program next Wednesday. It's our first attempt at a book forum. We have Dr. John Kreischer that some of you may have met at our annual meeting in 2019. He was the keynote speaker at our annual dinner. And he was also now a new author of in the Peterson series, a book on bird behavior. He is going to be interviewed by Dr. Joseph Wonderly. Both John and Joe go back to their youth with the Wyncote Bird Club before we were an Audubon chapter. And it was an important start to both of them becoming scientists, ornithologists, and the work that they do. John is the author of the Neotropical Companion. He has written a number of other books. This particular book on bird behavior was just published and released on September 1st of this year. I do know that Wild Birds Unlimited in Drescher has multiple copies. If you would like to get a copy of the book, the proceeds from that sale at Wild Birds Unlimited will become a contribution for Wyncote Audubon and the Militia Hill Hawk Watch. And so we're really pleased to be able to have Wild Birds Unlimited as partners in this particular program. You do not have to have the book read before the program takes place on Wednesday. We'll put up more info. You can certainly be motivated to buy and read the book. It's extraordinarily readable with a great deal of skill on John's part to explain bird behavior in a narrative that is just really extraordinary and makes it very understandable. So we hope we'll put that up on our Facebook again, and it's on our website if you would like to register for that upcoming program. With that, I'm going to be very pleased to introduce Kevin Roth. Kevin is our program chair. He has succeeded Jane Henderson, who was our program chair for many, many years. And Jane was ready to relinquish the post after so many successful years of doing that work. And very pleased that Kevin has come on board. He's a member of our board of directors, and he's also the education naturalist. I know that's probably not your title, but at the Pennypack Ecological Restoration Trust. And really great to have him step up to help us with our programs this year. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin, and we'll get off with our program. I do want to remind you there's a chat box at the bottom. And as you have questions during the presentation, you can type them into the chat box, send them to everyone. And Kevin will moderate along with our speaker this evening and try to provide answers to the questions that you raise. With that, sit back and enjoy, and I'm going to mute myself.
Thank you, Lee. That wasn't your normal 30-minute introduction, but we appreciate it nonetheless. So thank you all for joining us on this Friday night. We have over 30 people joining us. And I'm happy this is the first program that I was able to help Wyncote set up. And no better person than Bert Myers, who is one of my role models in the education field and one of the people that got me into birding in the first place. So thank you, Bert. Bert is he's the current director of environmental education for the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. So he's one of the big wigs up there in Harrisburg. So he was going to take this drive down and present this to us in person, but unfortunately we have to do it over Zoom. But we're still happy to have him. So prior to his position at the DEP, Bert was the environmental education specialist for the Pennsylvania Game Commission, and he worked at the Middle Creek Wildlife Management Area. I've heard a lot of good stories about that, but we'll save that for another time. Bert began his career as the environmental interpretive technician with the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Borough State Parks. He was first assigned at Denning State Park and later to Gifford Pinchot State Park. So as you can see, Bert has been around Pennsylvania. He's been around this field his entire career, and he's made a living out of it. So we're lucky to have him today. And he's very passionate about his subject, as you'll see tonight in his presentation. And I mean, if he talks about falcons as much as he talks about puffins, this is going to be a great presentation. So thanks again, Bert, for doing this for us. Looking forward to your presentation. And without further ado, here's Bert. Again, thanks for joining us Friday night. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. Take it away, Bert.
Now you can hear me just fine, right? Okay. Well, first I want to thank the Wingcoat Audubon Society for inviting me tonight, and Lee for setting it up. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank Kevin for this opportunity, and it was a pleasure to see him again and get that update that he's added a young one to the family. That's great news. So I've had an interesting career in the sense that I've worked for 3 of the 4 natural resource agencies within the Commonwealth, and it's been quite a ride. As a birder, spending almost 17 years at Middle Creek Wildlife Management Area was just phenomenal. The opportunity to assist biologists in the field, whether it was banding ducks or tundra swans or geese or turkeys, you know, just some of the exposure and experience are just something I'll cherish the rest of my life. Bringing that birding background to DEP and being now in the Rachel Carson State Office Building, which I'll touch on later, is the one thing that's been able to keep me connected to wildlife is the Peregrine Falcon program. As Director of Environmental Education with the agency, the Peregrine Falcon program and the FalconCam falls under my office's responsibility. So I'm going to share with you my PowerPoint on the Peregrine Falcon and following the restoration of Pennsylvania, and also being specific to the Rachel Carson State Office Building and FalconCam. So there we go. Some of you might find this basic information as birders, but I always like to make sure we're starting somewhere. We have a good starting point. So this classifications for falcons are under the raptors, and that includes eagles, osprey, harriers, hawks, and owls. And falcons are classified with hawks, including the 2 types, the accipiters, as you see on your left, and the buteos, which we're all very familiar with, a common example being the red-tailed hawk. Some peregrine falcon facts is that they are raptors whose Latin name is Falco peregrinus, which means wandering falcon. And as we get into dispersal and migration, I think you understand how appropriate that name truly is. They have been the highest measured speed of peregrine falcons, and this is courtesy of National Geographic, was 242 miles an hour. This makes the falcon the fastest known member of the animal kingdom. So typically adult falcons have a body length of 15 to 20 inches and a wingspan from 38 to 46 inches. They weigh between 1.5 and 2.5 pounds. They're not that heavy. And there's also a variance that peregrine falcons display sexual dimorphism in size. A lot of us are familiar with the color sexual dimorphism we see in songbirds or in waterfowl, especially ducks. But with the falcons, the sexual dimorphism in size, with females being 30 to 50% larger in size. And I think you'll pick up on that as this presentation continues. So from the birder's perspective, I like to always include the things like the description, field descriptions to look for. It's got a crown and nape black wedge that extends below the eye, forming a distinctive helmet. And I always like to joke that the peregrine falcon exhibits the Elvis sideburns, and so does the kestrel you can see in this picture. And that is one of 3 species of falcons that are generally found in the Commonwealth. The other 2 are the merlin, it's on the left, and the American kestrel in the middle. Just a note on that picture to the left, that's one of the few times in my life I've actually pulled off a good photo myself. That was taken thanks to Audubon at Hog Island during their Educators Week up in Matamoros Bay Maine. Just an awesome place. If you ever get the opportunity to go there, I highly recommend it. The middle picture, I'm sure many of you as birders have been to Middle Creek Wildlife Management Area, and though it's known for waterfowl, the swans, and the snow geese in March, it is a phenomenal place year-round to see raptors. Last time I was there, northern harriers and short-eared owls are often seen in the migration period as well. And of course, on the far right is the peregrine falcon. So geographic distribution, peregrine falcons have a cosmopolitan distribution, meaning they're found worldwide. They're the second most distributed species. Only the bird that is more widespread is the rock dove or pigeon, which is a popular prey species for the falcon, including downtown Harrisburg. They live everywhere except very high altitudes, rainforests, and the extreme polar regions. So the situation that led to the peregrine falcons being listed on the endangered species list started with really two things. First was direct persecution until changes within the laws, the game code in Pennsylvania, but also passing the Migratory Bird Act and some other important legislation. Raptors were killed by individuals. I don't know if I could call them hunters today, but it was a tradition that, of course, would no longer be tolerated. And of course, on the right is a picture of a plane getting loaded up with DDT to spray, and the DDT and the impact it had on our raptors within North America and on the peregrine falcon was enormous. So at a national level, the peregrine falcon timeline, in 1970, the Fish and Wildlife Service placed peregrine falcons on the federal endangered species list on the endangered level. 2 years later, DDT was officially banned in the United States. And from 1975 to 1992, more than 1,000 birds were reintroduced in the eastern United States. That first initial reintroduction attempt was interesting in the sense that birds were scarce. So sometimes birds that were raised by falconers were used in this reintroduction, and that had implications, as we'll see here in a little bit. So the first locations for this reintroduction program was the historical natural cliff sites, which is typical of falcons. However, great horned owls heavily predated on the newly introduced falcons, and that didn't work very well. So then the peregrine falcon release sites moved to coastal areas and cities, and that has been very successful. To this day, the majority of peregrine falcons nesting within Pennsylvania are nesting in urban areas. The reintroduction and restoration was successful, and they were removed from the federal endangered species list in 1999. And although they are at their historic populations in terms of number of nests and general population, since most falcons nest in cities, they'll remain as a protected species in Pennsylvania until their natural cliff nesting population is restored to pre-DDT levels. So that is the one goal of the peregrine falcon restoration program as it stands today, is to increase the number of natural nest sites within the Commonwealth. So let's move to the Rachel Carson building, and you can see that it provides a great opportunity for some up-close aerial shots of the peregrine falcons. The picture on the left is obviously the building itself, and you can see where that ledge is where the nest box is, and that's where 4 cameras have been installed. I have been out on that ledge. It's not as scary as you might think, but it has turned out to be a really successful nest site for falcons within downtown Harrisburg. So in the progression for the nest in the Rachel Carson State Office building, it began in the middle 90s when one male peregrine falcon was spotted in 1996. There was efforts to establish a breeding pair on the Rachel Carson State Office building. Unfortunately, and this is one of the issues with the initial reintroduction program, is that the original female was a hybrid, and she arrived, she, as we'll get into, was quickly replaced with a new female who was banded 4-4, and by the year of 2000, we had a breeding pair. So a little deeper into this, in 1999, it was determined that the original female was infertile and was safely removed. Within 2 weeks, the male returned with the new female banded 4-4. So that was the bird that was infertile because she was a hybrid. that was replaced by a bird that was brought to the ledge by the male. So from 2000 to 2004, this pair nested successfully. In 2004, the male peregrine was injured along the Harrisburg rail line. Unfortunately, the location of the building is right across the street from the Harrisburg train station. So that is an area of concern to this day. In 2005, a new male, WV, arrived exhibiting courtship behaviors, and the pair successfully fledged 3 young that first year. That was 05. And an amazing thing is the current male who rules the roost, pardon the pun, is WV. He is still there. In 2010, a new unbanded female arrived and began bonding with the male. And what happened to the female 4-4 was never determined. We don't know. In 2012, after sustaining an eye injury, the resident female was incapacitated. In early June, a new female, 48AE, was observed pair bonding. So from 2013 to 2020, this female, 48AE, and the resident male, WV, have successfully hatched 28 eggs. In 2019, the Peregrine Falcon listing changed from endangered to threatened in Pennsylvania, showing progress towards the restoration of the population throughout Pennsylvania. Now, this is a typical picture of the one corner view from the FalconCam. I would hope many of you are familiar with the DEP FalconCam. This corner shot, usually that's the male that's occupying that spot, WV, but in this case, that's the female, and just by the size and width of her breast, I can tell that. So in terms of seasonal calendar, and this is specific to the nest site in Harrisburg, in February, the nesting season begins. In March, eggs arrive, and that's a 30-day incubation period. In April, the hatchlings, they continue to develop. In May is when we hold the banding event, which I'll talk about more. In June is the Falcon Watch and Rescue. I'll also describe that fuller. And in July, the birds of the year, the rookies, they're flying, and their skills are improving substantially throughout July and into August. By that period, they're extending their flights beyond Harrisburg and preparing for September, which is dispersal. And dispersal is the method that species reclaim habitats and distribute their population across an area. And for example, if you use mammals, for example, there's some records of coyotes dispersing from New York State that ended up 400 miles away that had been tagged with radio collars, and they ended up in Pennsylvania. Dispersal was true of falcons as well. And by October and January, they're winter wanderers. WV, the male, tends to leave, a little unsure as to where he goes. The female 48AE, she tends to hang out throughout the winter. Now, gonna bear with me. I'm going to try and share with you a really cool short video that'll take you through the seasons of, let's see if this is it. Here it is. I'll take you through the seasons of the Falcons at the Rachel Carson building. So is that working, Kevin?
Yes, it's working.
Okay, so here we go.
Just no sound, so Bert's gonna
Okay,
moderate.
so here you see the female. She's in the nest box. That's WV crawling up there, looking a little sheepish maybe, but she's clearly the dominant of the two. And so here we go. First egg of the year. 2 eggs. Oh, we got a late snow that year. Little high-speed communication, and we have 3 eggs. And you'll see the male, he'll take care of some of the incubation duties. And that's 48AE, that's the female. And there she is. Up, we've got a new one. I'm hungry. They eat a lot. And then this is the period of time it is really fun to watch the birds, the youngsters, develop from these little puffballs into fledglings. So here's the routine. They eat a lot. Of course, peregrine falcons eat nothing but birds. Occasional bats, some insects, but this population at the Rachel Carson building eat exclusively birds. Now I think they're full and sleepy. It's also amazing to see how quickly they grow. And you can see they continue to grow quickly, and the box is a mess. There's just bird parts, feathers. The FalconCam is night or day. It's got infrared camera. So you see that they're really grown at this point, and we're getting close to seeing some flight feathers starting to come in. So one of the things that's amazing too is that how regularly they're fed and how regularly, primarily the male, is able to get prey to feed these growing birds. So here's Dr. Art McMorris from the Game Commission. He is taking one of the iasis, proper term for young falcon, off of the ledge, and he's going to band it. This is the banding event that we hold every year. Banding is key to what biologists know about birds. So now you see the birds have been returned to the nest. They've been banded. They're perfectly healthy. They're not injured. Flight feathers are starting to come in, and soon they're going to start exercising their wings, otherwise known as winging, as you see here. And it won't be long that they're going to be taking their first flights. They're getting a little braver, leaving the nest box, starting to look a little bit more like adults. This is a nerve-wracking part when they're right on the edge and we're watching them, but I'll get into that as well. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. That work okay, Kevin?
Yep, I see the PowerPoint. You're good to go.
Okay, so let's just keep, oh, excuse me for a minute. Oh, wait a minute. Just give me a minute. Just bear with me for a second. Where is that? There it is. Sorry. Okay. So let's bring this back up. There we go. It's on my screen. Can you see it?
No, I cannot, Bert.
Come on. There, how about now?
No, I cannot.
Now?
Yes, you're back on. Just
okay. Sorry about that.
all good.
Okay, so let's do this. And there. So the nest. Typically, the falcons lay 3 to 5 eggs. Incubation and care is divided between the male and female. You saw that depicted quite well in the video. For the iasis shed down feathers and are flying within 40 to 45 days of age. So it's really, I know I said that multiple times, but it's a really fast process. Migrations occur during the winter, and generally the juveniles do not return to the ledge once they reach adulthood. Okay, so the parental care, peregrine falcons are biparental. That means that both parents tend to the young. This is a common form of parenting for most monogamous birds. And for most biparental bird species, the male's role is to defend the territory and provide food both for the offspring and female. And the female's role is to tend to the offspring by feeding them and incubating them. For peregrines, that's mostly true, although as you saw in the video, at times WV will incubate and allow 48AE to leave the nest box. So here you see an example on the left, and I'll talk about this a little more, of a man-made site, an urban site, and on the right is your more natural cliff site. So historically, peregrine falcons nested on steep cliff sides, typically under an overhang. And today, however, most falcons nest on human-made structures such as skyscrapers and bridges. It just makes perfect sense, at least to me, because it mimics those high cliffs that has been the traditional nesting ground or nesting type territory habitat for peregrine falcons. So on cliff sides, the female would dig a shallow depression with her talons. Note that no additional nesting materials are added. That picture on the right, you can see it's just a scooped out ditch basically, and they lay their eggs directly on the ground. So here's another picture. This is Pennsylvania specific. This picture on the left is along the Susquehanna River. I cannot divulge that any more than that. On the right is an urban site. This is an older picture from the Rachel Carson State Office Building. Every year I do go out in the ledge before the nesting season begins, and I clean out the debris out of the nest. And excuse me, I get allergies in the fall. Anyways, so I clean out the material, and I put in clean gravel, and I make sure I clean off all the cameras, make sure the lenses are nice and clean. They don't stay that way for very long, but you can see that there's a whole safety protocol that I have to follow. I'm attached inside. It's actually quite wide. So in the natural sites, doing the banding there is a little more difficult. On your left is a phenomenal biologist. He's now head of the non-game wildlife management for the Game Commission. That's Dan Browning, and he's a well-published author. You might be familiar with his Birds of Pennsylvania. And on the right, you see him getting some assistance, and they're actually going to be measuring and weighing the birds, banding them, and then they'll leave. And that's a local celebrity in Lancaster County, Jack Hubley, who's known for his outdoor and environmental pieces he does for various media services in that area. So just in case we have any youngsters online tonight joining us, if you consider that you want to go into the field of wildlife biology, you might want to consider where you might find yourself. So here is a cliffside in Pennsylvania that is typical of a natural site. And there's the biologist. He's about halfway down, but you can see the whitewash here to his right, where the birds have been leaving a mess. And then there's some pictures from the Walt Whitman Bridge. This is a well-established nest here in Pennsylvania. That's quite a view taken on the left, taken by the biologist who goes up there every year. That's Art McMorris. Excuse me again. The interesting thing is they do a search and rescue there, but the volunteers are below the bridge in kayaks. So if a bird would take its first flight and not be successful and land in the water, they're able to usually quickly recover it, and no harm, no foul. Then here's another interesting contraption that is used to check sites along the Susquehanna River. This is the Route 30 bridge between York and Lancaster counties. Biologists used to have to crawl on this span by span till they got to the nest. That sounds pretty scary. So this is actually better. And they have this lift device on this pontoon boat that lifts the biologists right underneath the bridge so they could do the banding. So I mentioned some of the Falcon events that we hold annually as part of the DEP program, and that is Falcon banding in May, and that's used for identification and research purposes. Allows biologists to identify birds in the field. It also allows them to track birds in terms of dispersal if they're nesting in another area and are discovered. The Game Commission biologists, they pretty much handle the birds, and the ISs are taken off the ledge. One's banded immediately. All the data is recorded. It's returned to the ledge. It tends to keep the adults calm down a little bit. Then we quickly band these, do a little program for some students and some volunteers, and then we return the ISs back to the ledge. Just for fun, I'll identify that's Dr. Art McMorris on the left. He's the Falcon coordinator for the Game Commission within Pennsylvania, a really great guy. And on the right is Cindy Adams Dunn, who is well known to Audubon members, I would think, as being, I think, past president, and she's the current secretary of Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. So,
Bert, you muted yourself, I think, by accident.
okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so, and then in May, the Falcon banding, that is completed. And then late May and early June is the Watch and Rescue Program. That is Rachel Carson State Office building employees and also a cadre of volunteers. We are always looking for volunteers. If you're able to travel to Harrisburg and would like to spend some time just watching the ledge as these birds fledge, those first flights, as I mentioned in this bottom point, they're very dangerous. These birds are not flying well, and oftentimes they need rescued. Majority of the time, they're not injured. I can gently capture them, and we'll take them up on the roof of the Rachel Carson building and release them. Trust me, that's not an easy process. Once you get up on the roof, you have to have some people with you to hold brooms over your head to keep the adults at bay. They are very defensive and aggressive. And then once the bird is out on the ledge, is to, beat feet, get off the ledge before the adults return. And then normally within a few minutes, the bird's back on the ledge and everything's fine. So from dusk to dawn, we do monitor the ledge with the volunteers, and we have some volunteers have been doing it for almost 15 years now. So it's a real asset to the program. Getting back to the banding event, I wanted to show you some pictures of Dr. McMorris out on the ledge. And you can see in that upper left picture, in the upper left, there's one of the adults, and they do get close, as you can see in that picture in the middle. Art is very gentle with the birds, you can see in the right, and again, that's a great opportunity for some great shots of peregrine falcons up close. And occasionally, they find their target. So this is a Game Commission employee. This is Joe Kosak. He's the associate editor for the Pennsylvania Game News and a fantastic wildlife photographer, and he's trained on the fall safety plan. So he goes out on the ledge with his camera, assists Art, but you can see on his right cheek, he caught it with a talon from one of the adults that year. I can assure you the years after that, he always wears his eye protection. So good thing. I also wanted to, again, touch on banding. Here you see banding going on in the field in the left. In the right, early on, the banding was done within laboratories. Now the banding takes place right on site, and the birds are back on the ledge within minutes. During Falcon Rescue, there's a couple pictures depicting a rescue. This is one of our super volunteers, Renee Larry. She is a DEP employee. She is in the environmental center at the Rachel Carson building where my office is. So here was a young bird that we recaptured. This was the year before last. And then we have these specially adapted boxes that we put them in. You see we lined it with old towels, make sure it's nice and soft. We're super gentle with them, and then it's back to the roof and releasing the birds. So I would be remiss in my job if I didn't plug the Pennsylvania FalconCam. So it is a live video stream for the ledge to the world. You'd be amazed the followers we have. We have dedicated followers in the British Isles, which as a nation of birders doesn't surprise me, but also well in the Far East, Japan, China, Eastern Europe, Norway, Finland, Canada, all over the world. We have people tuning in to view in real time peregrine falcon, their behavior, the development through the spring, and you also get a good opportunity to hear the various calls, the alarm, the feeding. It's a really great resource. The web information access, I mean, there's the official website address, but if you would just Google DEP Pennsylvania FalconCam or PA FalconCam, it'll come up. We provide updated website postings. Actually, I confess that I do. And we provide more information on Falcon Twitter. And as you saw earlier, we also provide YouTube videos. So migration, I touched on this earlier. Now this is an old slide from 0203, but just bear with me. So here you see it up into the peak in northern New Jersey, and then it headed south, and then it bounced back up through Long Island, or up into Long Island, and it was back down. The same bird in early October of 02 was also initially its first flight from Harrisburg down to the tip of Delaware, or I'm sorry, that's Cape May, and then down into Virginia, in the lower Chesapeake Bay, and returned back. And this is all in the span of 1 year. Interesting thing is, that's the picture on the right, is that at one point that transmitter went dead, and the biologist assumed that the bird was gone, and the transmitter was still working. So they tracked it down to this salt marsh in Jersey and found the transmitter, and somehow the Peregrine Falcon had managed to lose his backpack. So this is a new program. It's called Modus, and Modus is a wildlife tracking system. In 2019, the Game Commission fitted Modus transmitters on 3 of the 4 fledglings at our building. So this is a rear view of Patty Barber. She's a biologist with the Game Commission, and Patty is putting on a very lightweight transmitter that is fashioned from almost like a miniature backpack. It doesn't bother the birds at all, and it's really been informative for biologists. So the Modus Wildlife Tracking System, it's a collaborative research network, and what they do is they coordinate automated radio telemetry arrays to study the movements of small animals. These are mostly flight studies, birds, and bats. And Modus is a program of Bird Studies Canada in partnership with Acadia University of Canada and collaborating researchers and organizations. And the Game Commission in Pennsylvania contributes to that effort. So what they do is they have the transmitters these birds are fitted with. They trigger radio telemetry tags by radio towers. So those radio towers already existed. It was just getting the technology to be able to communicate the transmitters that the birds had on their backs to these towers. And now they've succeeded in that. You can actually look this up online. Just Google Modus, and you can just do wildlife tracking. It comes up. You can actually go in there and look at some of the reports on peregrine falcons. And 2 of our birds that were fitted at this time, possibly this bird right here, they triggered hits in the coastal areas of Columbia. And that's not Columbia, Pennsylvania. That's Columbia, South America. Pretty amazing. So the name Wandering Falcon is really authentic. Now, I think it's interesting that the Rachel Carson building is named after the iconic author of Silent Spring. That's a landmark work that I'm sure some of you have read. It's not easy reading, but she bravely fought for the abolition of DDT, and this is where DEP's and DCNR's headquarters lie. Ironically enough, the building has had falcon residents on the 15th floor since '96, and as of 2020, 75 eggs have hatched. Yeah, my statistic earlier in this presentation I just realized was wrong. Apologize for that, but 75 eggs have hatched with the highest fitness rate of any site in the Commonwealth. It is very rare that we lose one of our fledglings or hatchlings. Unfortunately, that happened last year. We released a bird on the roof, and when it took its first flight, it flew got into strong wind and flew quickly in a direction that wasn't anticipated by the volunteers. And we've looked for it for days, and we're never able to locate that bird. But the other 2 are doing fine. And unfortunately, because of COVID, we were unable to hold the banded event, and therefore those birds aren't banded, and we weren't able to put Modus transmitters on them either. Hopefully, when this pandemic ends, when we can get a little back close to what normal is going to look like, we'll be able to continue that important research. So we do keep working closely with the Game Commission and keeping track of their health and behavior. And the hatchlings have been spotted nesting across the eastern portion of the United States. We have direct offspring that are now adults and nesting in downtown Wilmington, Delaware, and in Cleveland, Ohio. I still think it's remarkable. There's that coincidence between Rachel Carson. Her biography is not thin, but it is a really poignant story. Right at the culmination of her career, she was diagnosed with terminal cancer and continued to fight the cancer and for her cause for wildlife and the more stringent use of pesticides, and is a testimony to environmental heroes of the 20th century, especially when women were not considered to be true scientists. So her monumental impact on environmental awareness is amazing. She is worth reading. She is a fine author. It's fitting that a once gone raptor species should nest on a building named after her legacy. So this is my treat that I wanted to share with everybody. A Falcon gallery is some pictures from the Rachel Carson building. I'll admit there's a couple that are from my personal collection, but you can see that their aerial abilities are incredible. They are amazing flyers. You can see in these pictures too that these birds are banded. These are our adults. And then on the left, there's a picture of a peregrine falcon that was taken in the field at Middle Creek. In fact, I saw my first peregrine falcon in Pennsylvania at Middle Creek while conducting a winter waterfowl survey with the biologist. And the peregrine falcon was chasing a pair of ring-necked ducks. And when he dove to take them, those ducks, as divers, hit the water diving, and the falcon missed him and then landed in a dead snag and started preening. And of course, we're there with binoculars and spotting scopes. So if we put the scope on, we're like, that was awesome. That was a peregrine falcon. So on the right, there's a good headshot of the adult male. And again, you can see those Elvis sideburns. It's a really good field mark. Another picture that was taken at Middle Creek, remarkably soon after that story I just shared with you. And on the right is one of the adults on a foggy day in downtown Harrisburg. Now, I couldn't resist sharing a couple other photos with everybody that also talk about some of the other raptors that have been restored in terms of population in Pennsylvania. So I have a bald eagle gallery. The picture on the left I've used for longer than I care to admit, in terms of, I hear people, novice birders or just people that are inexperienced in the outdoors say, I saw a red-tailed hawk and it was 6 feet tall. You go, no, it wasn't. It was not as big as an eagle. So that's a great size comparison between a buteo, the red tail, and a bald eagle. And that picture on the right is just great for its clearness, its clarity, and looks like they're having fish for dinner. Yeah, as many of you know, there's multiple eagle cams in Pennsylvania. There's one in Hayes Street in Pittsburgh. There's also one that's run by the Game Commission, and they get a lot of traffic. And here's some other older photos. Here you have a juvenile on the upper left. The lower left, those are the initial eaglets that were brought to Pennsylvania from Canada as part of the Game Commission's reintroduction program. This is the early 80s. And that must have been an interesting plane ride because they were shipped by air with Game Commission and National Wildlife Service personnel on a propeller craft, a prop job. On the picture on the right, it's a little dated, it's 2015, but what you see is an eagle is on top of a duck trap. Those duck traps are used for banding of waterfowl. And so the ducks go into the duck trap because they're baited with corn. And this eagle shows up with all the ducks in the trap. And you can see all the ducks are diving, trying to get away from this thing. I just find that, that's the food chain in action, but also a humorous photograph. I do have some golden eagle gallery. This is mostly from work that I've had a chance to contribute to with DCNR in the Tuscarora State Forest. They have a research site there. They were curious in finding out, in conjunction with West Virginia University Research Project, how many golden eagles were utilizing the mountain ridges of Pennsylvania, and specifically the Tuscarora State Forest. And I helped drag those roadkill deer up to the top of that mountain one year. And let me just show that again. Oh, there we go. And I'll do it one more time. So you can see the size of these birds and their talents is just incredible. And remarkably, if you go on the Tuscarora State Forest webpage, DCNR, they'll have pictures there posted on their Facebook, actually, of the Golden Eagle Project. I had to add ospreys. Here's another population that was gone from Pennsylvania at one point because of DDT, and now they have returned, and they're getting to be more common, certainly down into the shore and in those areas going into, for example, Cape May. They have a lot of nesting sites for them, which you see on the left. Also notice, I love this picture on the right. It was taken by a retired teacher from Lancaster County, a really good guy. You can see the M shape of their wings. That's a really good identifying feature when they're in flight. You see the dark elbows, and also, of course, the black or brown stripe through the eye. Another great picture on the right taken by the same retired teacher with a little bit of a friend visiting. That would be your Baltimore Oriole, and just a classic picture of an osprey in flight on the left. So I couldn't resist sharing those photos with you. I think it's just a testimony to Pennsylvania in terms of conservation that these species have returned and are now doing much better in Pennsylvania. And so I think it's appropriate to consider a Rachel Carson quote at this point. So one way to open your eyes is to ask yourself, what if I had never seen this before? What if I knew I would never see it again? And I think we would be more appreciative and maybe a little more sensitive to the needs of our feathered friends and the needs of wildlife in today's modern world. So that is my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed that little video clip. At this point, I'm willing to answer the questions that you may have. I'm going to ask Kevin to give me a hand with that, of course. So.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you, Bert. That was great. So far, I don't see any questions in the chat. So if anyone does have any questions at this point, just throw them in the chat.
Yeah, I can check that too.
So yeah, I don't see anything, but as you can see, Bert's been all over Pennsylvania and all the different departments and everything like that. So I'm sure he wouldn't mind answering questions about, almost anything. I know from experience, we could talk all night about the different stories that he's had. So any questions I think that you have about his time at Middle Creek or with any of the different organizations, don't go crazy on him, but I'm sure he's open to answering any different questions here. So I see a couple coming in.
I believe the word "ius" is actually a Latin derivative. I should run downstairs and get my wife because she's a Latin professor, but it's a Latin root, and it is the proper term for a young falcon. Let's see, any fledge watches in your area? I know there are some in the Philadelphia area. I don't know the specifics to them, but Kevin can get your name and forward that to me, if you would, in an email, and I can reach out to Dr. McMorris and see if he might be able to help us out, because most of these watch and rescue sites could use volunteers, and that's true of banding as well. So how many peregrines are in natural non-urban nest sites in Pennsylvania? We're at about 45 nest sites, if memory serves properly, right now, and about 30 of those are urban, so do the math. It's significantly less. The one fledgling you feel was lost, is it possible it flew where you could not see it and it might have survived? That is very possible, that we just never found it again. It was not flying that well. That bird had been at a wildlife rehabilitator, so it was the last of the bunch to fledge. It was the last of that group to hatch. It was a little bit behind the curve. It was significantly later than the others when it did fledge. So do I think it survived? Probably not. Is it possible? Yes. So how many natural sites are wanted by Game Commission? I think that in the end, the goal would be have a balance between the number of urban sites and the same number of those in natural sites. you know, they are pretty specific in terms of habitat where they'll nest. Those river cliff areas of the Delaware, the Susquehanna, along the Allegheny, and some other rivers. But we'll never have an enormous peregrine falcon population. It never was that way historically. So those are the questions I've seen so far. Let's see, which cities have peregrine nest boxes? Well,
Yeah.
there's falcons that are nesting in downtown Philadelphia. Specific what buildings, I'm not sure. I can find that out. They are nesting, as you saw in the presentation, on the Walt Whitman Bridge. And let me see here. I think that's all of them. Are the things we can do to help increase their population? Oh, and Barbara said Allentown. She's absolutely right. There is an active nest in downtown Allentown. And I think they do a falcon watch there as well. What can we do to help increase their population? Well, you're doing one right now that would be contributing to the Audubon Society's great work. Their researchers is just outstanding. Another one I would mention is Cornell University. Their ornithology program is one of the finest in the world. You might want to consider supporting something like that. Also, just being a vocal proponent of raptors. You know, I've heard it from sportsmen for years. Oh, they affect game populations. That is not true. The fact is that the raptors, the falcons specifically, they don't feed on game birds typically. I mean, some ducks historically are called duck hawks, but I can tell you from experience, their primary food is rock doves, pigeons, and they seem to like northern flickers a lot too. So do peregrines eat locally? So the urban birds are just catching other birds in the city to eat? Yes, that's one of the reasons we've had success at the Rachel Carson State Office Building and within urban areas in general, is that the prey base is high. And so it's not hard for them to find birds to feed on and feed their young year round. And that's one of the reasons why 48 AE, our female, she doesn't leave. Then I'm getting information from Tora that the Berkeley nest is on Campanile, U.S. Berkeley. Besides pigeons, what other birds are taken? I mentioned flickers. I've been just amazed. Here we are in downtown Harrisburg, and our adult falcons have shown up multiple times with American woodcock. Now, where you find a woodcock in urban habitats, I wouldn't know, but what I suggest is that they are migrating along the Susquehanna River, and they're not great distance flyers. They're not great flyers compared to a falcon, and they're easy prey. So that's pretty interesting. Mourning doves are common, as are blue jays. I wish they would feed on the English house sparrows a little much more that are over at the train station, but that's another story. So, and I think that was all the questions there, Kevin.
Yeah, it does look like it. So thank you for, I think you had an answer for almost all of them. But if
Well,
anyone does have further questions, just get a hold of me, either Lee or myself, and we'll get those questions to Bert and
Sure.
we'll figure it out. But thank you all for attending Friday night, and thank you very much, Bert, for all of your presentation and your knowledge. So if anyone ever has a chance to get to go to one of Bert's presentations, back when things are normal again, he travels all across the state giving presentations and classes and workshops. You should go if you get a chance. Just thanks again for joining us Friday night. Bert, thank you very much. And
Kevin, great to
that
see
is
you,
all.
man.
Our next presentation is on, I think it is, hold on one second. It is November 20th. And it is Joe Wonderly, Hurricanes and Birds. So we'll see you guys next month. And that is all. The happy Friday night. And thanks again, Bert. Have a good night, everyone.
Good to see you, Kevin. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.